guys, it's Caroline and today I'm going to be sharing my top 10 tips to start learning Italian language. As some of you might know, I actually got my bachelor's degree in Italian language, and so of course I was a beginner too at one point. I actually was a beginner when I was 18 years old. It can be really overwhelming at first when you're learning a new language, so I'm going to be sharing my personal tips that really helped me delve into Italian language. Okay. My first tip is to watch movies and TV shows in Italian as much as you can. If you have Netflix, I highly recommend watching some of your favorite shows and movies, like things that you've already seen and are familiar with, in Italian, so you can actually go to the language and select a different language. So instead of English, you would watch it in Italian. And there are actually tons of movies and TV shows that are dubbed in Italian. So you can watch the movie and they'll be speaking Italian, and then you can turn on the English subtitles. Of course, the best thing to do would be to watch actual Italian films. I think that's so important in learning Italian language. Seeing how Italians talk with their hands, because that is such an integral part of the language. I will actually write some of my favorite Italian movies in the description box below. So you might be able to go off of my list to start watching Italian films. The more you hear Italian and see people speaking Italian, the more it's really gonna soak in. And movies are usually a couple hours, so that's a good amount of solid practice. Tip number 2, change your language setting on your phone to Italian. Knowing how important our phones are to us, believe me, this tip will make you learn the language faster than anything because you'll be desperate and you will need it. I changed my language from English to Italian, and at first I was so confused, but it would make me go and translate the words from my phone and learn what they mean. And after using my phone for like a month, I knew all of the words on my phone. And it was a huge confidence booster just knowing that I could understand that and navigate my phone in Italian. Tip number 3 is to listen to Italian music. Modern radio, like pop songs that are really popular in Italy. And the way you can find these songs is actually you can go to Spotify or Apple Music or some kind of streaming service, and you just type in Radio Italia and all of the recent kind of popular radio hits will come up, and just listening to that music will help you learn new words and get used to hearing it. You really have to be intentional about surrounding yourself with the language. Number 4 might seem a little absurd to some people, but it's to buy Italian children's books and read them and learn the words in them. And you might feel silly sitting there reading a kid's book, but I'm telling you, it helps so much. I mean, if you think about it, it makes sense because our parents or whoever taught you English probably read books to you. At least mine did. That was something I always did as a kid. I had my favorite books. I would get them out. I would, you know, have my parents read them to me. Reading those books night after night after night, day after day, I was learning new words without even realizing it. And it's the easiest way. I mean, those books are catered to kids who are learning a language. So of course, the vocabulary is gonna be easier, the words are gonna be more simple, but the basic important phrases and things that you need to communicate are gonna be in those books. Another thing that's awesome about children's books is that they all have pictures in them, so that's gonna make it even easier for you to kind of pick up what's going on. And I just think it's the best foundation to start learning Italian. Tip number 5 is to remember that everyone is a different kind of learner, and it's important for you to figure out what kind of learner you are in a language. So I'm more of a visual learner. I love charts. I love writing things out. I love flashcards. So you can start to figure that out, and it will make it so much easier for you to start to learn the grammatical parts of the language and things like that. And that brings me to my next tip, number 6, which is to buy some kind of a grammar book that has more of the rules written in it, because it is fun to read the books and listen to the music and watch the movies, but to really start grasping the language, it's important to know the grammatical kind of basis of it. Of course, you have to understand the past and present and future and things like that. And once you get those down, you'll really start to understand the language on a whole new level. So I highly recommend finding some kind of book that looks interesting to you in the way that it's structured, and just kind of making a point to get through a few pages of it every week. I think it's so essential to really feeling confident speaking. My 7th tip is to see if you have a friend or a close family member, someone in your inner circle who would be interested in learning the language with you, because it makes it so much more fun. It just motivates you a lot more if you have kind of a partner with you who's just as excited as you are about learning the language. It's not like you can't learn the language without someone else, but it definitely makes it easier. My 8th tip actually is to reach out in your community and see if there are any groups that meet up, or if there are even some kind of Italian courses you could do maybe once a week. It makes it so much better when you have that little community to really learn the language with. And it might feel really uncomfortable at first. If you don't try, you never know. So I would say just throw yourself out there and do as many things as possible to get yourself into some kind of community. Tip number 9 is to let yourself make mistakes. I had so much trouble with this at the beginning of learning Italian language. I was so afraid to make mistakes. I was so embarrassed to speak the language, and I just wouldn't let myself be confident when I was speaking. I would like question everything I said, and I would speak so softly, and after I said something I would kind of look at the other person to make sure I didn't mess up. I had zero confidence in how I was speaking Italian, and as soon as I let that go and just kind of let my barriers down and let myself mess up a few times, I learned so much more, and I just got so much more comfortable with the language, and people would compliment me and say, wow, your Italian's so good, and it was like, whoa, I guess, you know, I wish I would have started doing this a long time ago, but it's really hard at the beginning, so I totally understand if you're afraid, but I'm telling you, just make those mistakes, just force yourself to make the mistakes. The worst that can happen is someone tells you it's wrong. The only thing that's gonna do is help you get better, so there's really no reason to have any fear whatsoever, and I just highly recommend that you make mistakes and make them often, because that is honestly the best way to learn. My 10th tip is to just trust the process, be patient, and understand that everyone learns a language at a different pace. So if you're taking longer than your friend or someone else you know to learn the language, don't beat yourself up about it. Just realize that you might take a little bit longer to learn it, but that doesn't mean you're not going to learn it eventually. You just have to be patient with yourself and be confident and excited and trust that you're going to be fluent one day, because honestly, if I could do it, you can too. Just have fun with it, trust the process, and do your thing. Okay, so those are all of my tips. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it. That really supports my channel, and subscribe so you don't miss any of my future videos. And you can follow my Instagram to see more into my daily life here in Italy. I will see you guys in the next video. Ciao for now.